Well, there we go. The second map is in the books, and we have a decider on Mirage. Welcome back to NUEL Live 2019 here at the Red Bull Gaming Sphere in London. The broadcast, as ever, brought to you by Twitch students, Intel, and Asus ROG. I'm Raptros, and with Protalis once again. What a ridiculous map on Overpass, and that just sets the stage now for Mirage.
What a comeback from Lancaster. They were looking in serious trouble during the main portion of the first half. Swansea were up, I think, 8-2, 8-3 at one point. It looked like the game was all in their hands. They were dominating the CT side, but then the Lancaster comeback comes in. They start clawing those T-round backs. They start clawing those T-rounds back, and then when the sides switch over, it's a much more balanced affair. They do a great job at denying Swansea those key rounds, certain times trying to push the B-side defence, really saving Lancaster on that one. And now we're headed to Mirage. These two teams love this map. It's going to be great. It's going to be battle of the greats. Enzu versus Tobes with those AWPs. I can't wait to see it.
I'm rubbing my hands together because this is going to be an absolutely fantastic map. I know there are a lot of Swansea fans in the crowd. You can't quite hear them on the broadcast, but we can definitely hear them through the walls of the studio. It's absolutely crazy indeed, the amount of support that they have here. And they have travelled about 880 miles, I suppose, down on the train?
If you combine their stuff together, then it's certainly a few hundred miles each for each of them, and they're all competing the grand prize. They both want it so much. That's why Lancaster came back so aggressively in Overpass, and now we're on Mirage. It's the even balanced ground here now. The grand prize available. VIP tickets to ESL One Cologne 2019, a premier esports event in the calendar. They're going to get the chance to meet their favourite Counter-Strike pros, but before they get that chance, they've got to win this map. They've got to get to Mirage, and they've got to turn up. It's a game or go home on this one.
Yes, it is, and well, we've been hyping up the Mirage map since the pre-show, but finally we will get to see it here in just a couple of moments' time. Players just getting themselves into the server, getting themselves ready as well, but this is going to be, I have to feel, same as Overpass, a back and forth affair as the rounds get traded either way, and you quite rightfully point out as well, this is Tobes' playground for Lancaster, but can Enzu match him? I feel like he has the ability to, but it's the matter of the pressure on his shoulders now.
Certainly, and I think another factor that's really going to be important in this map is going to be anchor players over towards that B bomb site. You see quite frequently that in the event that a player has to rotate over towards A, just in case they suspect an attack is coming in, you have to leave an anchor player there that you know is solid. He's got to be reliable over towards B. He's got to be able to get 1 or 2 kills for himself and secure it into that one. And as we head into the game shortly, that's really going to be something that is really important going into this map.
Here we go then, the final map of the grand final of NUEL Live 2019, and it's going to be Lancaster.
One to look forward to.
It's definitely one that you do not want to miss. We'll be back with map 3 of the NUEL Spring Split Grand Finals here for 2019 just after this. Hello everyone and welcome to this year's edition of NUEL Live, and this, the CSGO University Championship Grand Finals here at the Red Bull Gaming Sphere in London. It all started back in February, where we had 133 teams across universities in the UK compete in a grueling Swiss bracket to qualify themselves into the top 16 playoffs. Playoffs then arrived, and then the favourites, many favourites, fell by the wayside. Warwick out, Oxford Brookes out, Portsmouth out, but 2 teams are left standing here today. It is the grand final newcomers of Swansea versus the grizzled veterans of Lancaster. I am Connery, Maddick, Raptros in it for short. Joining me on the cast today will be Protalis, and this is crunch time. This is it here for the NUEL.
Yes, it certainly is. You weren't wrong when you mentioned Lancaster being absolute veterans. They've won 2 NUEL finals in the past, and they've come runner-up in 2 ones before. Also, an interesting thing to note, that Lancaster were here last year, this time last year, against the Titans of Warwick, and were defeated then, so they're back again, and they're certainly going to be looking for blood. And Swansea, they've got it all to do to try and stop them.
Yeah, absolutely. We don't get many of these lands all that often in the university scene, and some of the players, this will be one of their first LAN experiences as well, especially for the Swansea guys who haven't hit a grand final in the entire existence of the NUEL so far. So there will definitely be an element of the LAN jitters going on, especially for Swansea.
Yeah, there's certainly going to be a little bit of nerves and lack of confidence potentially being seen from the Swansea side, especially when the stakes are so high. You've got 5 tickets to a premium VIP event, I believe it's ESL Cologne 2019, that are available for the winners here. So huge prize, VIP treatment, the ability to pick the different, meet the different players that you're seeing at the professional level, and it's really all to play for today. It's going to come down to the best of 3 series. I think it's going to go to 3 maps, and we've got 2 excellent rosters ahead of us.
Yeah, excellent rosters, and let's take a look at those rosters then, because we'll get ourselves, I believe this will be the team of Lancaster that's going to be up on your screen for you right now. Exit, Exploralis, Tobes, Enigma, and Wheelness. That's the center 3 that you see on your screen, the old core. When I said grizzled veterans at the top of the show, those are the 3 players that I am talking about, and all very powerful in terms of their fragging ability on the server, especially Tobes being an AWPing IGL.
Yeah, that's really not something you see very often. A lot of the times people think that it can detract from the tactical ability of that in-game leader, but it doesn't seem to have detracted from Tobes' ability at all. They had a really great run all the way to the finals. They've been undefeated in any series so far in Varsity, so it looks like his tactical prowess is really shaping up to be something amazing. Something else we can talk about as well is Exit. He's not one of those core 3 veterans, but he has the second highest ADR at 89.9, only behind Enzu of Swansea. He's a really powerful rifler. He's shown himself as an individual performer really well, and I think he's really keeping up with this experienced core 3 players.
Yeah, and when we're talking about Lancaster, they've only dropped 2 maps so far this season out of the 14 that they've played so far. Most of those going to be on Mirage, and we'll get to the Mirage discussion a little bit later on, because those teams are absolutely crazy on that map. So we'll pretty much guaranteed to see it, but it's a matter of when we'll get to see it. Will it be one of the first picks, or will it be a decider? That is the big issue. And then we bring our discussion towards Swansea, the sort of underdogs in this sort of situation. You see the roster up on the screen for you now. Atomical, Enzu, Fedis, Hazza, and Matcha going to be fragging out on the server here today. And I think one player that stands out to me and has stood out throughout this entire season so far will be that player of Enzu.
It's got to be Enzu. He's absolutely incredible. 94.5 ADR so far averaged across all of the maps. That's absolutely astounding. He's statistically the best player in all of the NUEL. And let's not forget as well, Matcha is a very recent addition to this roster. In the series against Oxford Vipers, he was an incredibly impactful player, pulling off clutch after clutch in different rounds, really high fragging on all of the maps, and they found him almost by chance by meeting one of his friends at a local LAN in the Swansea area, if you can believe it. So these 2 players are going to be, I think, the necessary ingredient for Swansea if they're going to want to be able to keep up with Lancaster's tactical prowess and experience here.
It's funny where you find CSGO players from time to time, but we do have a head-to-head, one of 2 head-to-heads up on your screen for you right now. These are 2 of the most potent riflers for each team. It's going to be Exit for Lancaster University versus Hazza for the Swansea side. Pretty similar in terms of their stat lines. Of course, the headshot percentage advantage going to Hazza, always able to find those heads, but these 2, they'll be dueling out on the server, no worries.
Yeah, certainly by the looks of the statistics here, you can quite comfortably say that Hazza is the entry fragger for Swansea's side. He's got slightly higher entries and a high headshot percentage. And a headshot percentage as an entry fragger is really useful, especially if you're using that AK-47, because one headshot can just completely eliminate a defending CT off a bomb site, and it can really open up different strategical inputs into rounds. Meanwhile, Exit has an incredible ADR. He's shown himself to be a really high impact player for Lancaster. So it's really going to come down to the duels between these 2 players as the main riflers for their teams.
Yep, and then we'll get ourselves a look at the AWPer head-to-heads then between these 2 teams, and 2 very potent names indeed. Tobes versus Enzu. We've already chatted a little bit about Enzu and his performance so far this season, and he has the stat line to go with it as well. We mentioned the 94 ADR, the entry frags, the AWP kills there. It's slightly going in the favor of Tobes there, surprisingly enough. Enzu also very potent with a rifle as well, so no matter even if he doesn't have the money to get that AWP onto the server, you should still very much be scared of Enzu. But Tobes, even though he has his brain working at 100% all the time because of his IGL role, he can still really put that AWP to good use.
Yeah, something I'd say that Tobe certainly has the advantage in average AWP kills per map is because he's the primary AWPer for their roster, right? Enzu is more than comfortable to pick up a rifle in certain situations. He uses that AWP as a hybrid weapon and picks it situationally when he needs it on different positions in certain maps. So he's really potent when it comes to that. His ADR is so high. He's got such incredible fragging potential. He's got the most viewed clip of all of NUEL history with that 1 versus 5 pistol clutch, which was absolutely amazing. So I don't doubt at all that there are going to be certainly some clip-worthy moments from Enzu in this series.
Even if he's the only player left on the server, you should still be very, very much scared of Enzu. And talking about the Swansea roster as a whole and their journey up until this point, because they had to make that entire run through the lower bracket, going up against previous champions Warwick, and you've also got the other favourites as well. You had Portsmouth, you had of course Oxford Brookes as well, which were looking very good coming into this playoff bracket, but they all fell by the wayside. Swansea just took them out one after the other, and they've gotten themselves a deserved place in the grand finals.
Yeah, and something you have to note about all of those series as well is they were absolute brawls of series. They were 3-map best of threes, and all of them went to the last map, even against Warwick, against Portsmouth, and Oxford Brookes as well. And the Oxford Brookes one, it looked really shaky at certain points on overpass, but somehow Swansea managed to bring that determination up. They drew the will to succeed through for them, and they made it to the finals here. And we can just see the standings currently, both Lancaster and Swansea on 19 points. Now, Swansea Storm Green have had to defeat Oxford Brookes Vipers, Portsmouth, and Warwick Stretchy Boys, all in best of 3 series in a row to bring themselves up to this point in time, whereas Lancaster, they had to win a much smaller amount of best of 3 series in order to make it here.
Absolutely. A more comfortable run through that upper bracket. You also see Warwick's second team there as well, which just goes to show how potent Warwick is in this university scene. Unfortunately for them, they're not here in the grand finals. You have UEA and Reading bringing it down to 8th place position, both having relatively good runs through the playoffs, but unfortunately didn't have the staying power to get themselves all the way through to a grand finals. And I can't wait to get this one started. It's absolutely crazy that we have this venue provided to us by Red Bull as well, Red Bull Gaming Sphere in London. If you get the chance to go to it, then please do, because it's an absolutely amazing venue, and it's a fantastic host for the games that we're going to have today.
Yeah, it's an incredible venue. It's an incredible place. It's almost esports personified in the modern environment. I couldn't think of a better place for us to have the tournament, and I'm really excited to get into it. I genuinely think that this has the potential to be a 3-map series. Both of these teams are looking incredibly competitive. I'd say Lancaster have got the tactical edge, in my opinion, with Tobes being that experienced leader, having come so close to winning potentially 4 titles if they won those 2 finals against Warwick, and being defeated by what is renowned as the NUEL's most decorated team, the best team ever, and those were the only teams that managed to defeat them in those finals. They took a break, but they're back now in spring 2019, so Swansea are going to have their work cut out for them if they want to have a chance at defeating Lancaster here today.
It's not going to be easy for any means, and that just refers to what you said a little bit earlier on about we both think that this is going to go to 3 maps, and we have a pretty good idea of what the map Vita is going to turn out like. If we see any deviation from that would be a surprise. But both teams do not like really to play Inferno or Nuke, so we expect those to be banned out pretty early on. And both teams absolutely love playing Mirage. So that if we get a Mirage, that is going to be an absolutely insane map to watch.
Yeah, I can give you some statistics on those map breakdowns. So neither team has actually played Nuke at all across any of the CSGO Varsity series. Swansea have played Dust 2 and Inferno, but they've played it once apiece, and both of the times it was picked against them. So it doesn't look like they're going to be going anywhere near those maps. Lancaster have only played Mirage. Well, they've played Mirage, Cache, Overpass, and a little bit of Inferno, but really not too much. Their core maps for both rosters appear to be Mirage, Overpass, and Cache, and I think the veto is going to go that way unless one team has decided to be a bit sly and learn maybe a slightly more tactical map on the side, try and catch their opponents off guard, hit them with something like a train, something like a nuke really to throw things off. So that it could be some really interesting stuff going into the veto situation.
I think if there's one team that is actually going to throw in a surprise like that, it would be Lancaster, because they've had so much time to prepare, whereas Swansea, they've always have to be focusing on the next series and the next series on that run through the lower bracket. Lancaster, they could just watch from the sidelines watch the VODs with Swansea, and then there's so many VODs with Swansea in them on the NUEL channel. We've been broadcasting them a lot, so there's a lot to learn from those VODs, and Lancaster are going to be just scouring all over them in preparation for this particular matchup. And if they do want to throw a curveball like a nuke, that would be a viable option for them. But I think in a grand final, I think you have to go for a comfort pick.
Yeah, potentially. It depends on your confidence at the end of the day, right? If they're confident more in their individual aim and their core's ability to perform, then they'll happily take each other's strongest maps. However, if Lancaster think they do have that tactical edge, then they can really catch a team like Swansea off guard on a train, especially considering the defeat they suffered to Warwick on it earlier on in the series. Something that Swansea, I think, lack is just the tactical depth and experience that Lancaster have, as you've touched on already. Fetis mentioned in his interview after the Oxford Brookes Vipers series that sometimes Enzu does take over the calling for maps. If he's feeling it, Fetis will happily, he'll let the reins be taken by Enzu and let him do the calling. And there was that 16-2 absolutely dominating display on Mirage that Swansea Storm Green had against Warwick Stretchy Boys, and Enzu was calling for that entire map, I think. So potentially, if Enzu's really up to it, we could see some Nico style in-game leadership, high fragging power going on in this tournament.
Yeah, if we get to see that, that will be absolutely brilliant. And you bring up that 16-2 stomp of Warwick on Mirage, and we also had that the previous map in that particular series on Cash, where Swansea had to make the comeback from a huge amount behind at half-time to bring that map back in their favour, bringing that confidence into Mirage, where they were able to stomp Warwick. And this is also going to be, using that, this is going to be a momentum-based series, I think. If one team comes out of the blocks running, they have such a huge advantage over the other. And, some teams in this sort of land situation do crack when things don't go their way.
Yeah, I think there are two core duos that really would be the main engines for the steamrollers for both teams. I think you're looking at Tobes and Exit on Lancaster. Tobes putting in that heavy AWP performance, and then Exit really doing well with the rifle. Those are the two players you want to see get momentum if you're a Lancaster fan. And for Swansea, it's got to be Enzu and Matcha. These two players seem to complement each other's play really well. Let's not leave Hazard out of the equation as well. He has had some excellent plays. He got a superb triple spray down on Overpass with a cheeky little flashbang thrown in by Enzu, which was perfectly placed thanks to the new flashbang assist in the HUD. But those are the two players that you really want to see get rolling in these matches in terms of absolutely raw firepower. We know for a fact that Enzu, almost on his own, if he's popping off and having a great game, he can completely overtake a map.
Yeah, absolutely. A force to be reckoned with on the server for certain. And another player that could also be that when it comes down to it is the player of Exit for Lancaster. Of course, not part of the original core that got those championships previous, but he's come into the team and he has lit the server alight with just insane plays. And he's going to be a standout performer here today if he turns up.
Yeah, absolutely. His aim and ADR as well. He's second only to Enzu in terms of statistical ADR performance. For those of you at home, ADR, average damage per round. So 100, it would equal he's getting a kill every round, which is absolutely insane. Enzu had over 100 ADR at one point in the tournament, but it's dipped now to about 94.5 after the series against Oxford Brookes Vipers. But these numbers mean basically that these two players, Enzu and Exit, they are contributing really significantly to the fragging power in almost every round of the game. And I think both players, looking at their statistics, they're guaranteed to get at least one triple kill round per map. So there's certainly going to be some highlight plays coming out from these two.
Yeah, we'll definitely look forward to that fact. And of course, there are a couple of players that we haven't talked about yet. We can talk about Wheelness on that Lancaster side. More of a support role, I have to feel, for him coming into this one. Not really the flashiest of players, but if he can enable the other players on his team to do what they do best, then he could be a crucial part of Lancaster winning today.
Yeah, it could really usually come down to that in a series that would be as close as this. Is simple things like flashbang placement, right? It might not seem major in the terms of like the macro game. It might appear that aim or particular strategies are what's going to come out on top. But when you have teams that are really evenly matched, excellently placed flashbangs, smokes, and molotovs, if they're well timed and well placed, utility usage can really turn a map around for either team that's using it properly. So if a supportive player like Wheelnius can be used in that example, he can throw the perfect flashes and allow Tobes to get a fade away after he's got one shot that stops him from being traded out by another defending CT player when he's using that up, or he's allowing Exit to get a double kill on the entry with a perfectly timed flashbang. These are the things that can really change rounds that would otherwise be going really wrong for your team and tilt them in your favour.
And speaking of the utility usage as well, usually coming through the qualification stage in that Swiss bracket, a lot of teams do prefer to basically, for lack of a better term, pug it out against some of the other teams here in this entire championship. But when things get to the nitty-gritty, coming through the upper bracket final, the lower bracket final, of course, the grand final as well, we get to see a lot more structured CS coming out from these teams here today, and I think that experience for Lancaster that will really benefit them in that department, because they've been playing this game for years and years and years as a core as well. They all know each other's intricacies and they can use that teamwork to their advantage. I'm worried about Swansea and their strategic plays here, I have to argue.
I think Swansea, I know for a fact that from interviews that Festus has done, that they do like to play a really puggy style. And to be honest, why wouldn't you? When you've got players like Enzu and Matcha, who have that really incredible aim, then sometimes a puggy style is all you need to just really brutalise your opponents and dominate them with aim. And against a puggy style, that's where the utility that I was talking about comes into success. That's one of the best ways to counteract a pug style, is use the smokes at the right time, use molotovs to stop pushes, and you can really limit the damage that a high impact player like Enzu can do if he can't get anywhere because his angles are smoked off or he's molotoved out of defensive positions. That's the way you counter a player like that.
Yeah, absolutely. You just got to think about some of the pro teams.
For example, in the last winter split, for example, of the NUEL, but economy management, especially on the CT side, is a huge deal because you need that utility. If you don't have enough money to get those grenades, or you're stuck on FAMASs and SMGs, you're absolutely going to be dominated by the cheaper and higher damage firepower from that AK-47. So it's really important that both CT sides, they need to focus on stringing rounds together. Even if the scoreline's tied up, as long as they can, it's not like trading one round back and forth, TCT, TCT. The Ts will eventually have the advantage in that situation because their weapons are cheaper. They'll get economy control if the loss bonus is neutered. Whereas if you go for like you win 3 rounds but then lose 2 and then win 4 on the CT side, for example, that's really going to put your money in a much better situation, and it's going to make the difference in the end.
Yeah, it might make an incredible difference, but the thing is, as we've seen in previous games throughout this entire championship so far, we've seen the importance of force buy rounds, especially Deagle rounds, where the players that can find their heads, like Hazza, for example, can just bean anyone on the server, and you can just basically treat that Deagle as a just one-tap AK in the right hand. So I think that will be a huge, huge factor as well. Who can just get the momentum of rounds together and not fall foul to those ecos and force buys?
Yeah, those force buy situations I think have been a really key component to Swansea's ability to actually get this far in the tournament. We've seen multiple rounds so far in the NUEL on all of the broadcasts that they've been on, where they're winning these key important rounds where the CT economy is still a bit shaky, but they can afford a buy round, and the Ts, which would be Swansea in this case, have gone for that force buy with the Deagles, and they managed to eliminate those CTs, take the rifles away, neuter the money, and then all of a sudden the tables are turned and everything's in their advantage once again. So those rounds are going to be really important for Swansea, I think, in order to carry them through some of these maps in difficult situations.
Yeah, it's definitely a lot to talk about. We're just waiting for the map vetoes to get themselves underway. A little bit of a delay in terms of that one, but we'll get into things relatively soon. But we've already mentioned that perhaps we'll get to see Cash, because that is a very strong Swansea pick there. They've shown good performances on that map before. We might just see Overpass here for Lancaster as well, perhaps aiming at a weakness on the Swansea side, because Swansea, they've played Overpass 3 times so far this season. They've only won 1 of those games, and Lancaster have had a much better record in that particular map, with 3 played and 2 maps won there. So maybe that's sort of that's an advantage they can just work in the pick phase here. I'm unsure 100% if they'll go for it, but if I was the coach of Lancaster, I would definitely be aiming that as a chink in the armor.
Yeah, certainly. I think Overpass in particular, because it's not one of Swansea's stronger maps, but Swansea really don't look like they they want to go to these other maps like Train or Nuke or Dust as an alternative. They've never picked them. They've never gone near them. They've always rather gone to Overpass as opposed to end up on those maps, even though it is a bit of a weak spot for them. However, the one map that they won, it was the last time they played against Oxford Brookes. It's one of the maps that allowed them to get here, and it came down to really when they were looking almost down in the dumps and they were being almost overrun by Oxford Brookes Viper. It was Fetis that started off with some high individual performances that strung a couple of rounds together, and then I think that gave his team the motivation and the inspiration to carry on, and then that's when Hazard took over. That's when Matcha took over the game and they really started to look powerful. Lancaster, though, they've had a slightly better ride on Overpass. They've played it 3 times and had 2 victories on there, as opposed to Swansea's one, but one of those victories was a 25-23 overtime, so it really could come down to the wire if they're up against a really experienced and skillful roster on that map.
Yeah, absolutely. And we had actually Experalis come on to a broadcast, I think it was for the lower bracket final, just after that game had been concluded, and said that he himself was more of a LAN player. So obviously we have this concept in CSGO that some people are only good when it comes to online, and some people that just come alive when it comes to being in a LAN environment. And do you think that's going to be a huge factor here today, or is that just going to be sort of just more of a background thing?
I think it will be. It will have quite a little bit of significance in. It won't be the main driving factor, right? It's not like players unless it's in some certain situations where they're playing cross-region, for example, and taking advantage of 100 ping, which you can't do in the NUEL because everyone's based in the UK. So hopefully the server connections are, at least decent. But there shouldn't be too much of a skill difference between online and LAN. The only thing that I'd say that comes into play and becomes a significant factor in that regard is the inexperience and the nerves of being at LAN for the first time, right? With so much at stake, as we've already mentioned, that's what's going to play the component. You get nervous, your aim's a little bit off, then you lose confidence, you go in for slightly more aggressive duels to try and recuperate some of the past mistakes that you've made, and then you're just losing those time and time again. So it's really important that players, especially that are new to the LAN environment, keep a cool head, keep it calm, and that's a responsibility that's going to be on the in-game leader for both teams to keep their teams cool, calm and collected and at their best performance playing at this LAN.
Yeah, and you don't just have the element at a LAN of spectators watching over your shoulder or on the big screen as well that we do have set up here at the Red Bull Gaming Sphere in London. But it's also the fact that you're not playing on the exact same equipment as you do at your home. Of course, you have your desk height perfect at home. You have your monitor. We have all the same monitors for all the players here today, but they may not be the exact same as the players have at home. They've been able to bring their own peripherals, yes. But it's just those little changes, those subtle changes of, is that monitor like too far away, too close to you? Do I feel the temperature in the room, for example? If that's off, that might throw someone off. It's all these small things that might just build up and cause someone to not perform at their maximum potential.
Another thing that might build up as well is if your opponent is gaining a lot of momentum and you can hear them cheering and getting loud, really commendating each other every time they win that round, it can really put your confidence off. You feel like your other team is, they're starting to get the advantage, they're starting to pull away here, and they're constantly motivating each other, fist bumping, shouting at victory. That's some of the things, a little bit of psychological warfare that can really put their opponents off in that regard. So that's another one of those small factors that you said that could come into play.
Yeah, absolutely. And, I personally have ever actually been in this situation before. I'm a solidly average Counter-Strike player. I think it has to be said. You actually beat me in one of the 1v1s that we did a little bit earlier. Surprisingly. I blame the AC that was blowing in my face in that sort of situation. Yeah. It was pretty chilly, and obviously, like the things I just described with the different setups, I wasn't feeling my best. I'll just use that as the excuse for that one. I did win the one previous, though, yes. So it's not all bad, but... this is...